Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Bushels. Today's guest is Kyle Woodkowski, a dairy farmer working to keep one of the last remaining dairy herds near the town of Boston up and running. We dive into what it's like running a small dairy farm surrounded by suburbs, the long road of starting from scratch, and the heartbreak of losing a barn to fire only to rebuild stronger. Let's get into it. All right, welcome. I appreciate you joining. It's nice to meet you. I know we chatted just a little bit on TikTok of all places.
Yeah, I guess I'm probably one of your smaller guests as far as farm size operation and out east here in New York. So
I wouldn't say smaller. I don't think the size of the operation really matters. You have a unique operation. You do have row crop, but different aspect of the farming. So why don't you go ahead and share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and all that good stuff.
I'm Kyle Woodkowski. I'm fourth generation dairy farmer from Western New York. We're out just east of Lake Erie and 20 miles south of Buffalo. So it's getting suburbanized around us, but we still have a decent amount of farms in our area. I'm the last dairy farm in the town of Boston here. My family's been farming this ground since 1927. It hasn't always been a dairy farm, but we've been in and out of dairying a couple times. When I graduated from Eden and I went to Alfred State, I was working for a dairy farm. Decided, well, I kind of really like milking cows and handling cattle, farming in general. So I went to college. I went to Alfred State for 2 years and graduated. And I came back and decided to just be a herdsman on the farm I was working for in high school. One fall, it was right around now, we were chopping high moisture corn or snappage. And the farmer that was doing the chopping came out, or I was up waiting for him. He was filling a wagon. He's like, come on, ride along with me. And so I went to go ride a few rounds and we were talking. He's like, what do you come back to this farm for? You have so many opportunities to do this and that. And he said, would you be interested in doing herd work for our farm? They milk 600 cows in the next town over. And so I told him this winter, I'll go over and we'll talk about stuff and I'll go work for them. So I worked for them for a short amount of time. And then another farm opened up an opportunity that I saw a future in because he had put a robot in when I was in Alfred and I helped him start it. And he rented out his old barn. I said, that's my opportunity to get into the co-op. And I started milking cows from there. I've been milking since 2016. Family, we still all farm this land, but I do the cow stuff primarily.
You worked for somebody out of college and now you're back at the family farm. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, yep. I went and did some herd work. And then after about 4 years of working off the farm, I worked off the farm and I also helped do hay. We did a lot of small square bales here. Not a lot by any means, but 10,000 bales a year at the most. And when we were baling hay, I'd come here and help do whatever needed to be done. I lived on the farm the whole time though.
You said 10,000 small square bales?
Yeah. We got our fair share of baling hay in around here in the summer. It's backed off since then, and I'm glad that we don't do it as much anymore, but it just gets hard to find help for it. As I've been getting more, building the dairy part up more, we've been scaling back and selling hay to horse customers. My dad's the one that does that part of it.
So you're baling all these small squares. How many are you using versus how many are you selling?
We sell about 80% of what we bale. We're down to only baling about 4,500 to 5,000 bales a year, I would say. I chop most of my forages anyway. Just find it easier as far as a labor standpoint to have one person in the chopper, and usually I'm able to unload wagons and just keep going. And we don't have to worry about finding 4 or 5 kids to help us unload wagons, and it just becomes time consuming. And those kids may not want to come back because they don't like the workload, even though we try and pay them enough money cash to give them I don't know what you want to call it, but get them to kind of want to come back and do it. But it's just so labor intensive that it's just hard to keep help around for small square baling hay.
If you're selling most of it, why are you doing small squares?
The market is mostly older people now that can't handle round bales. We sell a lot to places a little north of us that are higher end customers, I guess you'd want to call it. I call it high end tax bracket. They like to have a couple horses here and there, and they just can't handle large square bales or round bales. It's just a hard place or hard for them. They don't have a loader tractor. and generally they're in a smaller town district with 3 acres, so they can't have a big barn with a loader tractor to stack them in.
So are you making a premium on the small squares?
It was enough to pay the taxes and the fire and the insurance in general. And it's not a moneymaker, as more or less. When I was growing up, that's what we did. We did that and we farrowed pigs out. We did some in the spring. We would have an auction on the second Saturday in April. We'd have an auction for pigs to sell to 4-H kids. And then we'd do feeder pigs throughout the rest of the year. And so between the pigs and that, that's kind of what our operation was based on at home. I did not get involved overly with the pigs. I never cared for it. I'd help do whatever we need to do, vaccinations, clipping teeth, ear notching, castration. The larger majority of the management as far as that goes was my dad. And then my brother got more involved with the pig side of it, and we just kept doing some hay. Then in 2012, Dad started subleasing some land because we needed to really rotate some of the ground into row crops. And so we'd do 35 acres of beans and 35 acres of corn with a neighbor, and they did a lot of no-till, so we got into that. And as I got more into farming on my own, we took the land back, and I've been implementing my own practices, I guess you'd say. Growing my own feed more is cheaper than buying forage all the time. Buying 95% of your feed eats up the milk checks pretty quickly.
Well, I'm sure, man.
And I rented 2 farms, actually 3, I guess, if you count where the cows are now. The first farm was the starter place. I knew it was always going to just be temporary. The second place I was hoping was more of a long-term thing, but in the end, it is what it is, and there's no hard feelings. I keep heifers down there, but it just wasn't really in the cards to be building a barn in a place that I didn't own. Now I'm building a barn up here, a new freestall barn, to try and make things a little more efficient for everyone and for the cows, myself, everyone that's involved in it.
Are you farming by yourself, or do you still have family members that are actively involved with the farm?
I do the cow stuff primarily myself. I didn't want to buy the cows and then go into partnership and have to buy them back out of anything. So I always kept it that way. But as far as the farming on the crop side, my dad and brother farm with me. My grandma's also involved. Her and my dad are partnerships in the main farm. And where I'm building this barn, we bought the land in 2019. It's an LLC with my dad and brother. The main part we're hoping to kind of combine over the next few years. I know Laura had said something about if they talk about succession planning, and it was just a go, do it as you go type thing. That's how this is. We don't actually sit down. I know there's a paper, kind of things that go down on paper that we talk about, and just keep going and adjust for the times.
Yeah, I get it. I grew up on a farm, and it's hard to sit down and have those conversations. I think just in general for parents, it's tough to, I don't know, think about it, I guess you could say.
We managed to get by. I don't ever see it being sold right out from underneath us. I have extended family members who help out too. They have farms of their own. My whole entire family basically comes from a farm family. My mom's side, they have a poultry farm over in East Concord. And then my other cousins have a farm that they sell show calves and feeder beef out of. And we all sort of work together, and we all have our own little thing that we can help do. I breed cows myself. I took that up in college and got into that a little bit. So I'll breed cows for my one cousin, and he helps me with anything as far as construction or heating and air. We kind of work back and forth on certain things. So it's bartering, but not really bartering in a way. We all just get along very well.
When you talk breeding, are you talking like milking stock or show cattle?
I do my own breeding for the milking herd as far as heifers and cows go. At least 99% of the service is done by me. And then as far as what my cousins have, it's mostly the beef cows. They have some that they show. They actually have a half dozen or more calves of their own that they'll be selling for show prospects in the next few weeks. And that's just what they've gotten into. They carve their own little niche, and they do very well with that. Nothing's like out west. Everything is very big and inexpensive out there compared to here. A totally different market than you guys, it seems like, as far as livestock. Crops are about the same. That's across the board.
Growing up, at what point did you know that you're going to come back to the farm full time?
Honestly, it wasn't really until I started farming on my own that you could tell that you were working towards something. So I was 24 when I started doing that. When I was younger, I always wanted to farm, but it wasn't a positively talked about thing because my grandpa worked for Ford Motor Company for most of his life. And so he always wanted us to go get a good job. My grandma wanted us to get a good job. They lived through the hard times and didn't want to see us do that. And then my parents wanted us to get off the farm jobs too and do well for ourselves. But when I would say something about I kind of want to milk cows, or if dairy farming was brought up, it was just not a good thing. So when I started talking to my boss at the time where I rented that first barn, the couple was moving out. They had bought their own farm. They were renting that for 4 or 5 years. And I just happened to say something one day after we finished feeding cows, hey, would it be possible when they move out that I rent this barn? And he's like, yeah, I don't see why not. And we never really came up with any sort of a contract or anything. He's just like, you gotta talk to Upstate, or you gotta call the milk for a milk market, see what you gotta do there, and then do whatever else you gotta do. So I called, and basically Upstate said, we really don't want any more farms. They're afraid I was gonna come in there and make too much milk or something like that was the wording. I ended up shipping milk through him for 5 years. But when I had to finance it, we weren't really made of money, so I couldn't just go ask for, hey, can I borrow 50,000? So I started with the Farm Start program with Farm Credit, and they basically said, all right, you got to have a business plan and you got to figure out how you're going to pay for it. Basically, just make a list and submit this application. So I took what I had learned from Alfred through my business courses, and I wrote down my own business plan, and ended up working out pretty good because they came back and said, this is a pretty good business plan. Your situation looks plausible. And I guess I kind of forgot this, but I was raising heifer calves at the time for a farm that I kind of still lease it. I was recently leasing until the fire. I raised about upwards of 25 calves from bucket. They'd bring me bottle calves and I raise them to yearlings, and then they'd get them back and they'd do whatever with them. So I used those 20 calves because what the deal was is I own those calves. They were buying them back as adult heifers. So what I did was use those for equity on my farm business plan and everything. Just helped me out altogether to have that backing. And I never had to have a co-signer. I never had to discuss it with my family because I was technically renting a facility and buying all my feed. So it really wouldn't have affected this farm in general doing that.
Long journey to get there, huh?
Yeah, I think I picked about the hardest road you could take. But there was no other option. There was no farms retiring at the time. Since then, there's been about a half dozen that have quit. That wasn't an option at the time, so I just took that way. And it was probably for the best because I could do it at my own pace, my own way, and grow a little at a time, knowing what I want. I didn't want to grow from 0 to 100 in 3 years, but I knew I had to start somewhere and just plug away at it and get to where I am now. That was the easy part for the first 5 years. And the next 3 years, I had my next round of fun, and that was the next growth in the dairy business.
Basically, you started on your own. It wasn't your parents retired and you took over. You kind of started on your own in the meantime.
Yes. Yep. It was a started from scratch type deal, which there was actually people who were betting on me failing. And I had heard about it. And I was like, well, I guess it is what it is. But a lot of people have never said anything degrading, but it was just like, we'll see how long you last. And I managed to last. My boss slash, he would be my landlord at that point, said, if you make it 2 years, you will figure out how to be successful. I found it's actually 5 years when you actually start seeing somewhat of a return. But the first 2 years were pretty interesting in itself. Price of milk had tanked in late 2017, 2018. And the price of beef wasn't anything to write home about either. I mean, sending bull calves to the market. One day, the trucker came to pick up a cow. I was sending a cull cow, and I had a Jersey bull calf. And he said, we don't take Jersey bull calves anymore because they're not worth anything. They're too small. Buyers don't want them. They would take the Holsteins or any other calf. But I remember getting a check for $3 for a calf sometimes at the time. And the milk checks weren't anything very big. I didn't qualify for the milk insurance. Dairy margin coverage is what it's called now, but it had another name at the time. I didn't qualify because I technically wasn't shipping milk with my own contract. So I got it from all different angles as far as the price of milk and what we were getting and trying to get by with the milk checks and the beef checks. But I somehow scratched enough. I know that the bank account was in the red at times. You just hold on and you manage to get by till the next one. And then, all right, I just got to write out this and write out that. And you get caught up on stuff. And then the next year is a little bit better. So you get on top of it. It's a cycle, and you learn how to ride it.
How many years in are you?
This December will be 9.
9 years already, huh?
This last few years, I've gotten to the point where I do a little bit more. My brother work off the farm now as well. My dad works for the town. My brother is a custom operator. He works for a custom operator. He does the majority of the chopping. But as far as income, the income off the farm is not enough to support either one of them. The stuff I do supports the farm a little bit more now than the hay did. I put in money off the milk checks to pay the taxes and whatnot, and hopefully grow that and then involve that in the LLC a little more. Once I get them moved here, I'm actually about 2 weeks out from moving the cows back home. The new barn should be done about then, so it's fairly close. And then that's the big key to getting things into the next level. That's when I'll start to grow a little bit more on the technology side. There's a lot of short-term goals with technology, getting into precision ag. We don't do any of that right now. Most of our equipment's older. Most of my equipment's older. It was all I could afford at the time when I was accumulating stuff to get by. My book work is all paper. I'd like to get into better financial management as far as that goes, something a little easier. My grandma does everything in Cornell books, and I got into doing that. So it works, but it's just time consuming. And then also the dairy part, I'd like to get the cows up into some sort of a dairy management online. I do all that by paper too. When I had a fire and lost a lot of the records, I decided, all right, when this new barn is done, I'm going to transfer everything to some sort of an online Dairy Comp 305 or PC Dart, whatever I choose, and just make it so I have a secondary record keeping source in case I ever have an emergency again.
You mentioned this fire. Tell me a little bit more about this fire.
I started on this farm, that farm where the fire was, and I'll start from the beginning because it's easier to go through. In that winter, it would be about January, we got some diesel fuel, and we worked with this farm. I've known them all my life. They've known us. My dad's pulled tractors with their father. We just grew up down there. And so anyways, there was a rumor going around that they were selling their cows, and one day in January, Alan had come up with a fuel truck to show him where to go. And I just happened to ask him, I heard that you guys are selling your cows. Would you be interested in working something out? That was my only way to ever get into Upstate, the co-op that my milk is going to now. You had to take over an existing farm. Alan said, well, I'll talk to his brothers. There's 4 brothers at farm, and they're all in their late 60s. So he goes, and a week later, he calls me. He said, okay, we sat down, and I think time we discussed something and figure something out. So I had called New York FarmNet. It was a free service. I'm sure every state has their own sort of program like this. FarmNet came out, and they brought social worker with him, and he's like, well, we have a social worker for everything because you never know how some farm families discuss things over the table. So he went to Telex first, the farm that I was at, and he came here and discussed things before we had a conjoined meeting with all 3 of us to figure out goals, what everyone wanted, and how this is going to get broken down. So we had a meeting. It was the 4 brothers, me, Dave from FarmNet, and this social worker. And it was a pretty simple thing. I think we spent 2 hours hashing some stuff out, came up with a contract and signed it. And I moved into this farm. I was buying so many cows a month. And then we did an 80-20 split with the milk check. We would dissolve that, and then it would be 100% after 2 years. So after 2.5 years, I bought all the cows that they had. I got the milk market, and I was renting. It was a pretty steady thing. I was buying my feed from them. I was raising my heifers at home and making feed for them there, but we're a mile apart, so it wasn't a big deal. I lived a mile from that farm. So anyways, this is 2024. We had a tornado too. We had that, and July 10th, I think that came through. We just missed it. It came up the back of the farm and turned. It went north just as it came through the tree line and was a half mile from the houses. That was like, all right, this is getting crazy. I just remember the cows we were milking that morning. I milked, and I had 2 full-time employees. We were switching the cows out because I had to switch a full barn, and they were bellowing and just acting weird. And that tornado, I said, I've never heard the cows so loud before. And then about 3 hours later, we get tornado warnings on our phone. And that happened to be a vet day, so it was on a Wednesday. We get warnings once in a while. They're not common. They're very rare here. We get this warning, and all of a sudden a massive thunderstorm rolls through. And I'm standing outside the barn waiting for the vet, and I see these clouds. They're going in a circle, but it was a weird, they're going this way, that way, whatever. I'm like, holy crap, there's a tornado. And I called my vet. I said, wait where you are. There's a massive storm coming through. And within 10 minutes, the farm behind us was leveled, and it was just a pretty bad thing. And then fast forward a month later, August 21st, I'll never forget this. I go down to the barn, generally started chores early. I did all the feeding, cleaning before we started milking. So I was usually there till about 10 to 5. Then the boys would come out and we'd start milking. So I pull in the driveway down there. It was 3:35. And I pull up just in front of the barn next to the elevator, and I see the light. It looked like the light from the granary was on. We did everything the old hard way down there. And I was like, why is the light on? I was half asleep because you just wake up and you go down there. And I was like, why is the light on? I saw it flickering. I was like, expletive, there's a fire. And I quick backed up, and my phone was almost dead, but I grabbed it and I ran into the milk house, turned the lights on, turned the barn lights on. And there was cows in the stanchion barn all the time. We were switching cows all the time. And I looked to my right to get the fire extinguisher. I looked back, and you could tell the hay was just starting because it was in the granary. It must have started in the granary. There was a little hay mow. It was full to the top with second cutting, and then the other was with bedding. And when it caught the chaff, it just took off. There was nothing I was going to do. So I just remember you couldn't even have time to panic. It was just my body's doing whatever. My mind's out wherever. And I'm on the phone trying to call the one brother, and he didn't answer. So as fast as I made that phone call, I had one side of the barn out, and then I called 911 on the other side. And by the time he got to the other end, it was so smoky, and they got the information they needed. I hung up, and the last 8 cows, I couldn't get them out the normal way because they had to go across the alley. So I just kind of led one out the door, and they happened to go out. And by that time, the other brother came down, Alan, and I was pulling the tractor and spreader out so you get the heifers out of that part of the barn. And we got those out, walked through the freestall barn. It was just the weirdest thing how cooperative the cows were. Because after the fact, everyone's like, you got so lucky, because usually your cows will run right back into the fire. The way the whole thing happened is just unbelievable to think about sometimes, because it could have gone totally the opposite way of what it was, and I would have lost everything. Had that hay caught any sooner, I don't really know how long it was on fire for, but it would have had to been a good half an hour, I'd imagine, because I'm pretty sure that plywood room was completely burned up in there. But we had smelled it the night before, just never could find anything. We assumed it was an electrical, or someone was burning something had fallen in the barn. The 2 boys and my mom was there that night because she usually helps with chores once a week. They all looked, and we just never saw smoke, never felt any heat. It just smelled hot. But we went about our business and never thought anything of it till the next day. And then within the 12 hours, it was all gone.
You smelled something the night before, but fire wasn't really something that kind of stuck in your mind. You're like, maybe the neighbor's burning or something just got a little hot.
Yeah, it just smelled hot. Like someone was burning garbage, and it funneled into the barn which wasn't uncommon because we're not too far from housing. I wouldn't say a subdevelopment, but there's houses all around the farm. And it's just like, well, maybe someone's burning something. We didn't just actively see anything in the haymow. And then we hadn't baled anything in quite a long time, so it wasn't a hay type thing, because there was a hay dryer we ran all the time too. Luckily that wasn't on, or that would have made it like an inferno in there. At the time when the fire investigators were asking us, we're like 100% sure it had to have been electrical. But after time went on and you think about it, I was like, well, I just gotten a load of feed blown up in the granary the day before. I wonder if a bearing got blown up in there that was hot or something, and it's molded in the grain. Because I never had to go up there for the first day or so to shovel anything down. So no one was really in there. I don't know if Alan peeked in there. I think he said he did, but didn't see anything the matter. But it's crazy how fast things can change, and not always for the better.
You have an elevator going up to a top level, and when they come and deliver feed, it's your elevator that takes it up there. Is that what you're saying?
No, it was a 10 by 10 and 10 feet high plywood box that was in the haymow, and there's a blower pipe that was in there. The feed truck had a little blower on it, and they just blow the grain up in there. There was no elevator or auger that went into it. It wasn't like a feed bin, like you'd have a Brock bin outside.
Oh, so you think there could have been a bearing on the feed truck that was smoldering some of the feed. It just rode up there and just kept going and going.
Yeah. And whether it was that or not, we don't know for sure. The main electric part of the barn on the east side of the barn was all the electric lines, and there was some junction boxes and whatnot there. It was an old barn, you never know, and there was mice that were around. We don't know if something got in there either. It was one or the other, but it just was hard to pinpoint what it actually was because where it started was the worst part because there was grain, dust, and chaff everywhere. And that's like gasoline, more or less.
Sounds like a pretty unfortunate situation, especially as a young farmer going through all the struggles to get to where you were and then have something like that happen.
It was a setback, a pretty good one. Luckily, I had a place. There was a farm. They're relatives of my cousins. They had sold out the October before, and they kept most of the milking system intact, and the barn was there. We had to go and get everything up and going, but that morning, pretty much the whole neighborhood showed up and was in the driveway at one point and watching it burn. And my mom especially gets worked up about stuff like that. And she's like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "It's 4:30 in the morning. Everyone's sleeping, and my phone is currently in the truck charging because it died." I made one phone call, and that farmer said, "Well, I can't help you because I took my barn apart." And the other farmer that I was renting from was there in the driveway before this, and I asked him, "Well, you still have the vacuum pump and whatnot?" He's like, "Well, I sold it and this and that." And come to find out, D. Laval had came and got everything running there. Like, we could have got that barn going, no problem. They helped us get the milking system going there, and a bunch of people showed up to help us flush the water cups and whatnot. It's an old stanchion barn where the cows are right now. Nothing too special. Just it gets by. I can't really say anything bad because I could have ended up losing everything, or I would have had to maybe sell them at an auction if I had no place to go with them.
Needs to be a quick turnaround. The cows probably didn't get milk that morning, and they can't go that long without getting milk. Did you feel pretty defeated that day?
It didn't hit me till 3:30 in the afternoon. I had came home, and my grandma lives on the farm here, and I went up to see her and eat dinner. I sometimes eat lunch or dinner with her, and I sat down at the table and I just lost it. And I guess you were in shock for so long and you're running on adrenaline, it just hits you. But it kind of felt like, holy crap, where do I even start from now? I had started, luckily, the process 2 years ago to build a barn. I wanted to always build at home. And when I would discuss things with TLAX, it was always, we'll talk about it, but nothing ever went past, we'll talk about it, because they had to discuss with the four brothers what they wanted to do at the farm if I was to stay there longer. And I kind of wanted to really redo that old barn that burned and put a parlor in there and whatnot. But when the fire happened, I was about, I would say, 2/3 of the way through the whole process with the bank. And I did my CNMP book with Soil and Water and NRCS in the local office. And I did all the stuff I had to do. And the morning of the fire, I called my banker. I was like, "I don't want to alarm you if you saw the news, but my barn burned down and I kind of need to do something now." And she's like, "Well, you weren't at the bottom of the list, but you weren't at the top of the list, and now you're an emergency, so we'll push this along." So we started from there and gradually worked it proceeding. We closed on a mortgage in January. I started the barn in January, and this year has been messed up in general. It's a fast-paced year, it seems like. So between construction and crops and keeping the cows going and whatnot, it's been pretty busy, I would say. It hasn't been a very profitable year because you're trying to operate out of 3 different locations, and the cows aren't producing what they should because the barn's not exactly comfortable for them, but I guess it's enough to get them milked and keep them housed for now. But it's taking its toll.
I'm just trying to connect the dots. Was this barn that burned down, was it the one you were renting from somebody, or was it your own barn?
I was renting that one. That was the second farm I was at. I'm still kind of in there because the freestall barn's standing. I run some heifers out of there.
Okay. And how was it working with the owners on that after the fire?
They were good. We actually had the same insurance. We had the same company, but different. I don't know what you want to call it. I had renter's insurance. I had to have it for when I started. The first barn was 5 feet off a main road. I mean, you didn't want to have an accident and not be covered by anything. So I had a renter's insurance, and I updated that policy as I moved to the next place. But we had the same company. I should say we had our own adjusters, and then the guy that came out to do the work for the insurance, we had the same guy. We had to go through and give him all the information and what we lost and whatnot. Some of the stuff was covered. Luckily, I didn't lose very many animals. I lost 3 calves because When I was letting the cows out, the calves were in the corner where the gutter cleaner was. I 100% think I forgot them, but my mind wasn't in the place of, oh, I got to run out and throw them out the window or something. It was get everything out as fast as I can and trying not to get burned doing it because there's hay falling out of the hay chutes throughout the barn. Yeah, they were pretty good. We were kind of like family, so it was a hard ordeal to deal with. And then they did a majority of the cleanup themselves. That was a very long process. And then a week later, we had to figure out what we're doing with the hay because there was another cutting of hay ready to chop. And I was like, well, let's just put in the silo. That's good. And it's the easiest thing we can do right now. So we did that. We powered through it. I still get along very well with them. I actually rent some of their ground more now, and they're adjusting to see what they want to do as we go through the future.
I didn't know if they, blamed you.
Not really. They were there with me daily. They're actually the ones that were employed, more or less, because when I took over, they were like, well, I can't just sit and do nothing. So they worked for me doing chores and whatnot. And the oldest brother made a lot of the decision making. I got along with him the best. And there was no blame towards anyone. It was like a shock for everything. Their wives came down. They're like, you're lucky you didn't die in the fire and this and that. And it was more of an emotional time for a month or so.
Such a life-changing event, right?
Yeah, I look at that now, and I've heard friends of ours throughout the area that farm. There's one farm in particular that's had the same kind of fire, not the same way it started, but they were milking cows the same way, and it started while they were in the barn, and they didn't lose any of the animals, but they lost their facilities, and they had to make a makeshift thing to get by. There was no farms for them to send them to at the time. They could sympathize. A lot of the community came out, and that's where you learn how you have a really good community. They were awesome, the people that came out to help, and I didn't really have to think about much for a day or two other than you need to just get yourself on your feet, more or less. And there was a couple that they stopped for 3 days after. I tried buying the feed from them that they brought out. They're like, what is your mix? What is your TMR ration? And do you need anything? Do you need this? And are you okay? David and Phillips, I could never thank them more for that. And they would check on me. They have a large dairy in town, but they also own a couple other farms where they keep heifers in a relative area. And so when they were going from farm to farm, they'd stop in because it was in between. It's sort of out of the way, but they stopped, and another farm, they donated some hay. Everyone was calling, what do you need? What do you need? And I was like, I really don't know. I know I'm chopping hay tomorrow, so I really don't need haylage. I guess some dry hay and some bedding to get by. And the people that owned it were more than helpful. Actually, Brenda, that co-owns some of the farm with her brother, she milks cows part-time for me. It gives her something to do.
You had to chop haylage within a day or two of that?
Within a week, we were chopping hay, and then a week after that, we were chopping corn. It would be 2 weeks because it was the beginning of September when we were chopping.
I can't imagine what it'd be like going through that. I've known people that have lost buildings with hay fires and stuff like that, but haven't had to go through it myself.
I don't know if I can describe the feeling. When we were chopping hay down there, because I didn't have much up here at the time to do, we were driving the wagons around pieces of the barn. They had hay scattered everywhere. There was 8,500 bales up in the mouth that made a mess because you had the excavator up there pulling it all apart and trying to get the hot spots, which you can't just get out. They ended up burying a lot of the barn in this back pasture, and the trenches are still there, open. And we're just driving around pathways to get to the silo from some of the fields because the other fields were from the other side of the farm. You didn't have to worry about it. I don't think you can ever mistake that smell. It just smelled wet burning hay and whatever wood, steel, shingles, a little bit of everything. It's just something that if it happens twice, I'd probably have a heart attack out of the whole ordeal.
How long did it take for everything to stop burning?
Until it was cleaned up, there was hot spots for a week. I think we had to leave it for at least 2 weeks before the guy came out to inspect. Then insurance had to inspect it, and they basically just declared it a giant loss because there was nothing you could do. There was no way to investigate that. It was such a massive fire. And that's when we ruled it electrical because that's all we could think of. And so they started cleaning up themselves. And every time you'd go in, they used a loader tractor for almost everything. They'd put in a dump truck or a dump trailer and dump it out in these pits, the hay and whatnot. And it would start on fire out in the pits. And it burned probably for, I would say, a month and a half. And even when it was stuck in those trenches.
I imagine because some of those fires could be so far in that hay that you can't even spraying water on it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, because basically when it was at its peak and its worst, the walls fell from all four sides and the hay mow just fell flat down. And so you had, I don't know, 10, 15 feet of hay that was just tunneled under there that was untouched in a way because like it's insulated in the middle. And then every time you open that up, it'd be hot or it'd be burning from the bottom because whatever was on fire down below. I mean, I had a feed cart and there was a gas can full of gas down below that. And I'd imagine that started at one point. It was just a lot of things at once.
Was there any houses close to this building that started on fire?
No, but luckily we had no wind because if we had a west wind, it would have probably burned the shop and the house. They had an old brick barn for a shop and it melted the shingles off the side of that. On the house, it had vinyl siding and it melted that. It was all warped on one side. And then another building on the other side that had some warped, and it's still like that because they never redid it. But the vinyl siding up on the top of the block is all warped. I had a kind of unique situation in that whole thing because it probably wouldn't have worked if someone came in there to do what I was doing if they didn't know them as well. Being as close to them, it worked out through the good and the bad times. And they took a chance on me really running that. And they even say when I get the cows up here, Alan really misses the cows being close by because he could milk more.
So you're in the process of rebuilding right now?
Yes. The new barn is on the property that me, my dad, and my brother own in the LLC that we bought in 2019. So I know that I have a place there. I don't have to worry about the land or anything like that.
And was there an existing barn or parlor already there?
No, this is completely from the ground up new. We did the site work in November of last year, cleared the spot out and leveled it off, and then started building it in January.
And how much further do you need to get done on it?
I'm just waiting for the milking equipment to be finished. Steel valve's coming probably this week, it sounds like. And they have about 4 or 5 days worth of work to do before they finish up. And I have a couple of things to finish up in the freestall barn, water and gas, and then I'll be in there.
How many head are you going to be able to hold in there?
There's 82 milking stalls and 17 stalls for dry cows. I'll keep a group in there for the dry cows so I don't have to trailer them back and forth. And then I'll have a pen for freshening. And it's in a place where I can add on in any direction in the future if I end up having kids or something and want to grow it or stay the same. It can be changed in many different ways.
Yep. What style milk barn is it?
It's a 3-row general freestall barn with a feed alley on the south side, and then I'll have a 8 parlor. I bought a used herringbone shell.
Yeah, I guess I'm not that familiar with milking setups. I know a lot of people are going to the automatic or autonomized systems.
Robots are a big thing for small and medium-sized farms. A lot of the farms around here that are larger are putting in rotary parlors, a carousel. It's more efficient for them and costs less than a robot. I looked into robots. It's just one robot. You're figuring $180,000 per robot plus installation, and that's way too much for someone in my position to be spending right now.
So how do the robots work?
Basically, it's got its own computer system and keeps track of the herd. And they keep track of about 65 cows, is what I'm told. I worked for one farm that had one, keeps track through RFID tag in their ear. And then it also has its own system. Every cow's got their own profile in this system. And they have to be milked every so often. So it keeps track of if they're not milked in so many hours, she's got to go in. Usually it's a free thing that the cows have access to that at all times. And they can go in, get milked individually, and then they get some sort of grain rationed out for whatever is punched into the computer. Then they go back into the freestall barn, and at their peak milk lactation, they can go in it up to 4 or 5 times a day if they're making
Really?
a lot of milk. It's basically geared towards that cow making her own decision to be milked.
What's the most common setup for a medium size? Is it the carousels? Or is that more for large?
I think the carousel parlors are more large. I would say 1,000 cow plus dairies. I would say a lot of the medium size have a conventional pit parlor, whether it's a 6 or a 8, milking 8 on a side. But a lot of farms are putting parallel parlors in. You can fit more cows in an existing. If they had a herringbone 8, you can make it a 10 with the parallel because the cows will come in and turn 90 instead of coming in on a 45 and where the herringbone, you milk them on the side. The parallel, they come in and you milk them from the back between the legs.
Is it easier doing it from the side or the back? You'd think they'd learn that you're doing them a favor.
The cows themselves are pretty good. It's usually the heifers the first time. They're not really around people like that. They're not around people 24/7. And so the minute you go in there, they're nervous because it's all new to them. And their first line of defense is maybe if I kick him, he'll stay away from me. But then after 2 or 3 times, some of them are good. They'll just stand there and they just lock in. But the ones that kick after 3 times, they usually know, all right, this feels like it's doing me good. I won't really bother them. But you gotta be gentle and slow and smooth with it. So you can't just go in there, oh, I'm milking you, and swing the milker in there and put in the pipeline or whatever. I think the parlor will be easy because they'll follow the older cow's lead, but they won't see you when you're down the pit versus up top. It'll be interesting to see how things adjust.
Describe this a little bit. You're in a pit. How does this work?
The pit parlor is about a little less than chest level. Mine that I'm building is going to be 34 inches tall. So the cow's feet will stand right about here, and the udders will be, I would say, chin level. I have jerseys, so they're a little shorter.
If you get kicked, it's not in the legs, though.
No, but it's generally in your chest, I guess.
Hopefully not the head.
No, I don't think it would ever get to that point unless you're putting your head right down by their legs.
With this fire, did you ever think for a second, I'm going to have to get a bucket and milk these babies by hand?
No, not at the time. But at one time, not too long ago, I was like, man, it'd be easy just to bring the cows here and even have to hand milk, and it would be a lot better than where I at. But the problems I had smoothed out, so it wasn't so bad.
How long do you think it'd take to hand milk each one?
Good 20 minutes or so. Right now, it's about 7 minutes a cow. The way I'm milking him now is about 7 minutes. If I was hand milking him, 20 minutes to half an hour would be about right. You'd have some hellish forearms.
I was going to say, that's not easy work by any means.
No, when I have my dry cows up here, so when they calve, sometimes I'll strip out a bottle for the calf just so they don't have to wait that however long I take them to the barn. Because if they calve at 9 in the morning, they won't get milk till about 4:30 in the afternoon. So I'll hand strip out a cow sometimes. And by the time you strip out one 4-quart bottle, it's like my wrist and arm feels pretty good now. But I would never want to do a whole cow that, especially if she's getting over 100 pounds. That would be a long process.
Be Popeye Jr., man. So how long does it take you to milk the cows morning and night? Go through all of them?
Right now, I'm milking 55. It takes about an hour and a half. Generally, in the morning, I do most of the morning milking, and then at night, I have a friend will come out and she'll start milking while I'm feeding and cleaning, and then I'll help her finish the last half. But you use 5 units, and you get in a rhythm and flow back and forth through the barn.
So what time of day are you starting?
I usually get to the barn between 3:45 and 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oofda.
You get pretty used to it after a couple of years.
So is that just so you get done at a decent time at night?
Yeah, more or less. That's kind of how I always wanted to get done earlier at night. So the earlier you start, but it comes with a price. You don't get to sleep very late.
But if you were to start at 7, then you'd have to milk at 7 o'clock at night. How far away are they?
Miles one way, but you figure about 15-minute drive one way, and you do that 3 times a day. That adds up pretty quick.
3 times a day, you're milking?
No, but I go back over around middle of the day to push up feed or run off some feed for the cows and check for eats and clean them quick, and then I come home. Usually, if we're doing field work, I won't stop, but I only milk twice a day, 4:30.
And you have a pretty good team helping you out, so if something comes up or you need to get away.
I have a lady that relief milks one night a week for me usually. She comes Thursday nights now, but she only does the milking. No one else does the feeding or the cleaning, so usually I'm always there. I never really get a day off. The last time I've actually had a full day off was in October of 2021 before I moved the cows, because I moved into TLAX November 1st, 2021. So that was the last time I've actually ever had a full day off.
What'd you do with your time off?
I actually went out to Michigan, and a buddy of mine had puppies, and I got 2 dogs from them. Just hung out for the weekend. It was nice to do that. That farm before I moved to TLAX, the one I started on, that one was pretty simple. You had to wheel out feed by hand and whatnot, and I was only milking 35 cows at the time before I bought the ones down the road. But no, it wasn't too hard. If something went wrong, I usually got a phone call saying, oh, this broke or something. What do I do? And you just walk it through it, and it wasn't so bad. But then when I moved and I added more cows and whatnot, it was more complicated after time. And you couldn't just leave because there was more stuff involved, but it was also 60-year-old equipment that wasn't holding up very well.
Yup. All sorts of challenges, isn't there?
Yeah, and you find it hard to get away in the wintertime because when we have a deep freeze or we get pretty good blizzards here, it's just hard to leave and then, oh, we got 4 feet of snow. What do you do?
How much snow do you get a year?
I think last year we got 82 inches for the whole year, and it actually stayed most of the year. So we're kind of in ski country, so we get the bands and they'll dump on us.
Because of the lake effect?
Yeah, I guess from what I've been reading lately, the lake's still pretty warm, so we can have an active winter season this year again if it gets cool enough.
You said the lake's warm?
Yeah, when the lake's pretty warm throughout the winter, that's when we get the most snow because the cold air passes over and it sucks up the evaporated water. And then when it gets over us, it'll start snowing. I guess that's the easiest way to describe lake effect.
How far away from Buffalo are you?
20 miles south. If you look north from where we are, because we're on the top of a hill, you can see the city pretty well. Beyond that, Niagara Falls, sometimes if it's steaming.
That's crazy. Yeah, I watch a little football and you always see Buffalo Stadium just getting pounded with snow.
That stadium is about 10-15 minute drive from us. Now that the Bills have been doing pretty good, everyone's been going nuts about it.
You probably don't have time to make it up to games, do you?
I've actually never been to a football game like that, but I think it'd be fun to go to one at some point. We were talking about this not too long ago with my grandma and my one cousin. It'd be cool to go see one that is in the middle of a blizzard in the wintertime because that's when people seem to be the craziest.
Especially when they got to shovel out 2 feet of snow just to get people in there.
They seem to get quite a bit of people in there to do that. They just shovel all those seats out.
And they probably have to pay a lot of money too.
I think it's $20-some an hour to go shovel snow.
Probably not a very fun job though.
It depends on how much you really want to work, but they usually get quite a few people to go up and do that. There's so many dedicated people, that's all they do. And then my brother, I don't know if my brother's done it, but he'll go in and plow parking lots sometimes if he gets called in.
At the stadium?
Yeah, pretty good racket if you have a plowing business.
I'm sure.
But when we get a really bad storm where it drops more than 3 feet on us in a span of like a day or two, that's when people get called out the most for doing residential work and whatnot. One year, I don't think we did it last year, but in 2014, the week before Thanksgiving, we got 4.5 feet of snow in 2 days, and the county just quit plowing our roads. So we took a blower and I blew my way to the town roads because the town kept plowing, and my dad went the other way. And the T-Lax at the time, they were trying to get the milk truck in, so they had to blow the road out for that. And we kind of opened it up, and luckily we did in case there was ever an emergency that like a ambulance or something could get through, but that's not uncommon for it to snow like that sometimes.
4.5 feet in 2 days.
Yeah, and you better hope you don't have wind.
Is it pretty open where you're at, where a lot of wind can stir things up?
Yeah, we're right on the peak of the first hill off the lake, so it usually comes right off the lake and hits us.
Do you get a lot of rain too, or just in the winter you get a lot of snow?
It depends. We had a really wet spring, but it's been very dry since June. Actually, we're in like a 7-inch deficit of rain right now. The fields are dry as a bone. The corn was marginal. Beans are short, and as far as chopping, but once people start combining, you'll know more. I don't think the bushels won't yield as great around here, but the hay is taking quite a hit. It just quit growing after July.
When you get rain in the summertime, is it big events like snow, or is it just in the wintertime you get big snow events?
No, it's usually nice slow showers in the summertime. You don't get 3 inches, but 1 inch of rain equals 10 inches of snow. So that's where the craziness of the snow comes in.
So it's like a 4-inch event when you're getting that much snow.
Yeah, we don't really get all that much in the summertime. I think it's been since 1998 since we had a massive flood, and we're on top of a hill, so it didn't affect us very much. It just washes down everywhere else.
That's interesting. I don't know anything about meteorology. I know snow, but I wonder if your snow is a little bit different than ours, just in terms of density coming over the lake. But it's not uncommon for us to get 3 or 4 inches in a rainfall event, but we've never gotten 3 or 4 foot of snow at one shot.
I think you guys get pretty cold out there compared to us.
How cold does it get where you're at?
And a good winter, 0 or just a little below 0, but not for a long period of time. When the lake freezes over, that's when it starts to get really cold. For a while, it'll stay up in the teens until mid-January, February. The lake keeps us somewhat warmer. I guess north of you would get really cold where it's 20 below 0.
I'm just thinking, I wonder if we're actually warmer here, so our snow is a little wetter and heavier. That's why it doesn't pile up as much as yours. Is your snow usually pretty fluffy?
No, it's all over the place. Sometimes it's real wet. And when it's like that, you got to worry about snow load on the roofs. And if it's not windy enough to blow it off, you better be ready to shovel something that's not going to stand that.
And once the snow hits, it's there. It's not melting until spring.
No, we've had really odd winters up until last year where we would get a lot of snow and then it'd melt and it'd be warm. There were times in January it was 51 degrees on New Year's Day. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, but it's not always the same year to year. Last year was the first good year in probably 10 years that we've had snow all winter, and you could actually snowmobile for people that do that.
So you can't snowmobile every year?
If we don't get a consistent amount of snow, hunting season was extended. So the trails used to open around the 20th of December. Now it's not till after the 1st of January, I think. There were times in December where we had a lot of snow you could ride, but you couldn't because it was still closed. And then by the time January came around, it would melt and make a bunch of mud, and then the trails would be all mud. Then you kind of hope it freeze, but it never would. And it'd snow again and keep the ground covered, and it wouldn't freeze again, and then it'd melt. It kind of melts from the bottom up when the ground doesn't freeze, so it makes a mess.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just doing some research. I'm just trying to figure out why you guys get so much snow, but not any more rain than us. So our winters are cold and dry. Yours are cold and wet. So where you're at
Yeah,
in the wintertime, it doesn't get real dry. So like as soon as you touch something, you're getting zapped.
if the ground freezes, it dries right out. It feels drier in the air, but it's hard to say.
Like in Iowa, if you don't have a humidifier running in your house, every time you touch the fridge, you're getting shocked.
Yeah, you have to have a humidifier in the house because the heater's kind of sucking all the moisture out of it,
Yeah.
especially if you have a wood stove.
Or if you go to grab your car handle or something like that, you're getting
No, it's
stuck.
not that bad outside usually. I think there's enough moisture in the air that we don't get that way.
That makes sense. Because I was going to say our rainfall events sound the same in the summertime, but we don't get the giant snow events like you do. And that makes sense.
It's isolated. Even if you split Erie County, where I am, in half, the northern half up to Lake Ontario doesn't get much snow at all. It'll get cold. They'll have the same climate, but we get more snow than them just because of the way the lake's set up. And then same with Lake Ontario, that goes straight off, and the Tug Hill Plateau gets tons of snow. I think they get double of what we get usually. That's where all the snowmobilers go usually because the trails are so much better up there. They have 6, 7 feet of snow all the time.
That's just crazy because a really good snow event in Iowa, every once in a while, maybe every couple years, we'll get like 10 or 12 inches, and that's like a big deal. But a lot of 1 to 2 to, I would say, 6 to 8 is the higher end, other than like the outliers.
The news station likes to make a big deal out of any time we get some snow that's 6 to 8 inches, but to me that's nothing. And you go out and you drive, the people still lose their minds over it. But last winter we would have a foot of snow on the roads or something, and it wasn't like a big deal to drive through. You just gotta take your time. That's one thing I'll never miss is hauling feed or hauling cows because it didn't matter. You always had to have feed at the barn. So once a day, I always haul enough for 2 feedings. And then if I ever had cows freshening or drying off, I tried to dry off cows when the weather was halfway decent, but you have a calf born, you got to milk her, so you just take her whenever. And there were times at 3:30 in the morning, I'd head out early and go over there, and the roads aren't plowed, but you got to go when you're plowing snow with your pickup. That stuff is crazy, I guess, to anyone, but 6 to 8 inches really isn't too bad for us.
You have to run chains and stuff on your equipment.
The mixer wagon, yeah, stuff like that you got to go up a small hill with that it's not going to get in the barn real easy. The loader tractor, I have a 4-wheel drive, so I don't really run chains on that. But the other thing is daily spreading is kind of a pain, especially if you get a lot of rain in the fall and the ground doesn't freeze and then you get 2 feet of snow. You got to figure out where you're going to go or just pile it somewhere without getting stuck.
So you're constantly spreading manure?
Yeah, twice a day.
Really?
Yeah, I actually applied for the funding for a manure storage system, and I'd like to get away from doing that and be able to just push it in a pit and spread 2, 3 times a year, or at least 2 big times a year, and then sometime in the summer you top dress hay meadows or something. Other than that, you spread twice a day.
They don't let you stockpile it, huh?
You can, but we're not in a CAFO, KFO kicks in at 199 cows and higher, and then they have different brackets of what you can and can't do. For anyone under 199 cows, it's kind of like just don't go spread in a ditch. Be smart about where you're spreading so it's not on a hillside and it's going to run off or something.
Yeah, I know I grew up on a feedlot, and my dad and brother, they'll just knock down some corn and stockpile it there. We have some hay ground, but not enough to cover the manure. So we just have to knock down some corn, stockpile it until the crops are off, and then spend about a week hauling that stockpile into that field.
Yeah, summertime's kind of tricky because you got to find a place to go with it. When you got hay growing, at a certain point, you can't just spread on it anymore. So we do stockpile some throughout the summer. And then as soon as you start chopping, that field gets the hit because wherever you can go at that point, you just take it out and go. But in the winter, you just try and stay where you chopped, but you end up rutting fields up and it makes a mess in the spring. You go out and disc the ruts over so you can work around or whatever you got to do. That's what I'd like to get away from. And plus, it's hard on equipment.
What size spreader do you have?
At home here now, I just have a box spreader and New Holland 185, 310 bushel spreader. And then where the cows were, I still have the slinger down where the heifers are. That's an 8118 night. That one's a little bigger. That one, when I was spreading down there twice a day, you want a four-wheel drive on it if we got any amount of snow because you weren't getting around very far. It pulls hard and it's just a big spreader.
Are you filling that thing up twice a day? Because that's a pretty decent size spreader.
I was between the stanchion barn and the freestall barn. You'd fill it up and then you top it off with the wash water from the milk house that we collect in a pit. We would spread all that.
Those side slingers don't do very good with wet manure.
They really don't like pack either. But if I put a little water in it, usually it would mix it up and it would spread pretty decent. In the summertime, you'd have a lot of slurry though because all the cows are drinking more.
Are you cleaning out the bedding on the regular?
Yeah, I mean, you'd pull out the wet bedding and it adds up pretty quick. Cows kick a lot of it and waste a lot of it. And then the freestyle barn, you have mainly animal waste. There's not much bedding in there.
Yeah, I got you. That's all we ran when I was kids is those night slingers. They're running something a little bit different, like the old school box spreader, except instead of having the chain on the bottom, it has a big press that has this giant hydraulic shaft that just pushes everything back. They're a big machine.
Yeah, like a hydro press spreader. Does it have the twin augers in the back?
You can adjust the set of the hydraulic speed that way. If you're doing half-mile rows and you want to spread it in this gear, basically from once you start, it'll be just about done to the end. Whereas like a slinger, you might have to go slower or faster, just depending on how things are going through.
Yeah, that's nice compared to slinger and any really other conventional box spreader because you're limited to the speed. You try and put an even application on a hayfield especially, but more or less you're playing with the gate to keep it from all flowing out at once, or then you get down to the end, there's barely anything coming out.
So many things that are hard to control, plus once those slingers get stuff up in the air, the wind takes it too.
Yeah, generally you want to be really good about keeping that flap down, especially spreading against the wind, not with the wind. I'd wash windows a fair amount of times in the wintertime because you go out and you really had no choice because you're stuck going in one path and then all of a sudden the wind changes and the tractor's covered and it's like, well, I'm just going to wash the windows and this thing's going to get pressure washed in the springtime or something. But
the box spreader's coming out the back, whereas a slinger, it's the left side. You don't have a choice or left or right.
yeah, any of those larger ones where the augers are vertical, they wouldn't fit under the gutter cleaner or the push-off ramps for the freestall barn because it's an old barn.
Horizontal spreaders.
Yeah.
And a chain conveyor.
The gutter cleaner was, it was chains and it had a chute to come out and drop the manure out.
The spreader.
Oh, that night it had augers.
But you said
you're talking about the vertical. Yeah, or the box spreader. Yeah, that's just a chain and a beater, double beater.
When I was a kid, I distinctly remember that's the only spreader my dad had. It was like waist high where I would be now, and we still use it to haul gates around and stuff, but they're about a 3,000 head feedlot now, so I don't think that'd cut it.
And probably hold enough for a 50 square foot section of the feedlot, and that's about all. You'd have to probably make 100 trips out of there.
Their newer buildings are bedding packs.
Oh, okay.
They'd probably just push stuff over the top, or the conveyor would just slide right under it, not do anything.
I don't know where we'd be without a skid loader. Up until 4 or 5 years ago, I bought a new loader tractor because I figured if I'm going to use it every day, I better just get something new. And after having that, I don't really know where we would be without that or the skid steer.
What do you have for a skid steer?
An older New Holland House 180,
Really? All hand control or foot control?
hand and foot. I'm pretty good on those. I did the skid steer rodeo at the fairgrounds when they would have them for the one farm show in the spring, and you kick butt on on things when you do them because you're so used to using your hands and feet. You never think about what your feet are doing. So whenever there was a contest, you just do whatever.
That's confusing, man. I grew up on case, so forward, back, then your bucket tilt, then raise the boom, all right here.
I like the case controls. I have a little 1816 that I use to clean calf pens with. It's been repowered with a 20 horse motor, but you sit in it like this and all your controls are like a typical case. I like that. When I was in college, they had two 1840s, so you got used to those pretty quick.
The first real skid steer we had was an 1845C. Same thing essentially, and then I think they got a couple 95 XTs now.
I wouldn't mind like a 65 or a 75. I've driven them. I like having a foot throttle. Where our LS 180, everything's on the hand throttle, but it's old and dependable. Most of our line of machinery is, I would average it out to be 50 years old as far as the tractors go. We try and keep newer line of equipment. Now that I'm actively doing more on the farm, I've started trading stuff in here and there when I can. Our biggest tractor for us at home is a 5088 International. Dad's pretty mechanically inclined. I can fix stuff. Dad restored that one. We restore tractors here and there when we can, usually keep them after that. But it'd be nice to get a little bit newer stuff. Like a newer skid steer would be nice at different times, but we can still fix that 180 anytime, and you can get parts for it pretty easy, so we keep it around.
The throttle's on the hand lever?
No, you have a throttle up above your one drive handle.
Okay.
So it's like a typical skid steer.
I got you. Yeah, that's how the 1845 was. I think that was like
Yeah.
on the side. Man, it's been so long since I've been in that thing.
Yeah, I think the cases are down by your left leg.
That's how the 95 XT is. Left or right, but I can't remember how the 1845 was.
Yeah, the New Holland's kind of up where your grab handle is, so it's up about head level, I would say.
Once or twice a year, I make it back and run the skid steer. Not very often.
I end up using ours daily. For the longest time down at T-Lex, I was using a loader tractor for everything. I'd scrape barns. The skid steer was at home, and then I just kept my loader tractor down there because I had bags of feed that I'd load out of. And I would bag all my corn down there. So I would use that loader tractor. If I had a tire on it, I'd scrape barns with that and then clean out the pen with that and load feed with that thing. I have a new loader tractor and it'd have 1,000 hours in a year, but that's common when you have them running 24/7.
Yup, you're getting your use out of them, that's for sure, man.
That's why I wanted one with a warranty.
Yup, makes you sleep a little bit better at night, doesn't it?
Yeah, and now that we've been farming so long, it'd be like, yeah, Dad, we can fix this old tractor, but wouldn't it be nice to kind of have something that we could upgrade to have? We could put a GPS in it, or we could do whatever we wanted with it. And yeah, someone might have to come out and fix it or diagnose it with a laptop, but at least we would have something that's a little bit more efficient. And then we could always keep the old ones around. It's not like we had to sell them for anything. So you have backup, but it's getting to the point where we'll buy one newer large tractor and one newer medium tractor and get more efficient with our crops and everything. It's hard to waste money with fertilizer right now, the price of it.
Well, I don't know if you listened to any of the other episodes, but as we get ready to wrap this up, we're going to finish with Pass the Mic. So I'll have a question for you. We'll see how good of an answer you have. It'll be different than most people because you'll probably answer it as like the dairy perspective instead of row crop. And once we get through that, we'll have you ask a question for the next guest. How's that sound?
That sounds good to me.
So the question Zach asked, he says he sees a lot of older people talking about the next generation of agriculture. And the question for you is, what do you think the next generation of agriculture needs to bring to the table to not disappoint the previous generation?
Things have changed so much that I think to make everyone happy, you do have to work hard, but you have to be smart about it. But now that the general public is wanting to get more information of where their food comes from, I think we have to be a little bit more conscious about what we're teaching, where our food comes from, and get more involved in that and show the older generation that we're still doing the same job, but we're trying to do it a little bit better, a little more efficient. We're trying to be transparent with consumers on everything. I'm assuming it's the same everywhere, but everyone wants to know where their food comes from, and you can't just say, oh, the supermarket, because that's what we're trying to get away from. But the older generation, they see it as you got to work really hard. And I think you still have to, but you just have to be a little more efficient about it. You have to keep on top of everything. Now there's a lot more technology and social media is a big player on things, and you got to watch out for yourself. I think we're heading in a good direction. Just keeping people happy is sometimes the hard part.
Yep. I don't want to bash anybody, but there's definitely a lot of uneducated people that just haven't been around it yet, the farming industry.
Yeah, that's the downside of social media is that they can get on there and say whatever they want to and kind of make their own story, I guess. I don't know. It's just altogether different now than I guess it would have been when my dad was starting to get more into farming in the 1980s. And that was a whole nother ball game for them.
Tough times, right?
Yeah, I think our farm would have been a lot different if the interest rates weren't so high. We maybe would have been dairy farming the whole time and not have stopped and did something else.
It all worked out in the end, didn't it?
We never know our future.
You're doing pretty well for yourself from where you came from, basically starting from scratch.
Yeah, my uncle Dave used to say you can't start dairy farming from scratch. And I worked with that knowledge of I think you can, but you really got to get used to the hard times. It's going to take all the hard times to get to the good times. You basically break your back and not make much money. But in the end, it starts to turn around. I'm finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel with this new barn. I look forward to that. I look forward to growing the technology and just being able to have a life out of it, I guess.
Exciting times ahead, man.
Oh, yeah.
So, our next question, he's not going to be a dairyman, probably a row crop farmer. What kind of question do you have for him?
I guess my question would be, is the thought process behind your decision making geared towards bringing up the next generation of your farm? Are you thinking about how it's going to transition as you grow? Or if you're going to stay the same size, is it making it easier for them to take it over?
I appreciate you joining. It's been good visiting with you and get a different perspective from a state outside the Midwest.
Yeah, we're a little different out here, I guess. Out by you, it seems like 3, 4, or 5,000 acre farms are pretty common. 1,000, 2,000 acres. That'd be a large farm to us around here, but tracts of land are different. It's very hilly. There's a lot of hills and valleys. I've never been west of Michigan, but it seems pretty flat once you get past Pennsylvania.
I'd say that 15 to 2000 is kind of where a majority of farms are or under, but it gets bigger every year.
Yep.
Cool, man. I appreciate you joining. We'll have to stay in touch.